Welcome back. That was a fun evening, wasn't it, out there on the road? Let me compliment you. You guys were gentlemen. You were energetic. You wore us out, but thank you for doing that, and RSU is just tickled to death with how you handle that. So welcome back. Now we move into our legislative forum, and the leader of that tonight is the counselor from Smith City. Is that all right? Yeah. With no further ado, let me introduce to you Mr. Clay Ballinger. Yeah.
All right, can you hear me okay? This thing working. All right, we have a real treat for you tonight. It's something that every year at Boise State is one of the most popular, one of the most enjoyed events of the whole week, and we've got a lot of good stuff. I think you'd agree this week so far, right? We've got some gentlemen here from this. Not sure what to do about that. We've got some gentlemen here from the state capitol. We've got 3 state representatives and a state senator who are giving up their holiday week to be here with you tonight. They finished a long, hard session this year at the legislature, and they've decided to spend this evening here with Oklahoma Boys State. So I'm going to introduce them. I'm going to have them all come up. Let's give them a huge Oklahoma Boys State welcome to our state legislators. Okay, have a seat. Here's the way this is going to work, all right? I'm going to let the legislators take a couple minutes apiece, introduce themselves, tell us where they're from, where they represent, what they focus on, what's important to them, and then we're going to get right into your questions. So you know how you do this, right? You stand up, tell us your name, where your hometown is, and then intelligent, well-thought-out questions. I promise you these guys are ready. They've been fighting with each other, I hate to use the word fight, all session and with the governor, and they're going to share a lot of that with you tonight. So ask them the tough questions, but no silly questions, right? We know what we're doing tonight, okay? So we'll start on this end. Representative Josh West.
Right on. Hey, thanks for having me, y'all. My name is Josh West. I represent District 5, which is up at Grand Lake area, so all of the Grand Lake area. It's my 6th year. I got elected in 2016 with 3 of us up here, and always love coming and doing this. This is my 4th time to do this since I've been elected, and it's good to see young men that are taking this and being a good example for your peers. My wife, I have a wife. I've got 4 kids. My oldest is a sophomore in high school next year. I got a freshman, and my daughters are in 4th and 2nd grade. So busy families. My wife's a mental health therapist, and like I said, I always appreciate coming here. I'm glad Mickey's here. We're supposed to have one more here. J.J. Dossett's here, and so Mickey's a Democrat, but I think it's important to hear difference of opinion and also see that although we do disagree, that we can sit around the table together and shoot the bull, and I don't have to stand up and talk about, I hate Mickey Dolan. So it's good to have him here too, and I'm someone from the opposite party. So thanks for having me, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Good evening. If you'll give me the liberty, every year, this is I've been up here every year since I've been elected for the Legislative Forum. If you don't mind, I'm going to take a selfie with you all. So go ahead and throw it down with you. Would you mind? Come on. Y'all can get wild. I mean, come on. There we go. Here we go right there. All right. Thank you very much. My name is Scott Fatgetter. I saw a sign out front of the Capitol one day that said, long-haired freaky people need not apply, so I went ahead and cut my hair off and ran for office. I serve House District 16, which is Okmulgee County, primarily a little portion of Muskogee and Tulsa County. Glad to be here with you tonight. Look forward to your questions, and don't be afraid to ask tough questions. Like Josh said, I mean, Mickey and Josh and I came in together, and we fight a lot on the House floor, but we leave it at the door. But we can have some arguments up here tonight, too. Thank you.
All right. I want to, before you go, I got to say one thing about Representative Fatgetter that y'all may not know. 32 years ago, he married my sister. So He's my.
We've been making it happen ever since, baby.
So yeah, he's my brother-in-law, but he's my brother-in-law. Give him a hard time, okay, Senator?
That's just wrong. Senator Marty Quinn from Claremore, so you're in Senate District 2. We're glad to have you. First and foremost, I want you to know we're proud of you. I know that it takes a little something extra for you to actually be here, and we're proud that you made those efforts, proud that you got recognized for that. Love to have you here in Claremore and wish you well in the future. As I said, Senate District 2, that comprises parts of Rogers and Mays County. We go kind of to the eastern side of Owasso, back over to Pryor, down to Catoosa, and then we comprise Claremore and Verdigris. I've been in the House for 4 years. I started out there in 2010, 2014, ran for Senate unopposed, and we've been there for the last 8 years. So a little bit of difference between the two, but I'm one of those guys that loved my time in the House. I have a lot of respect for those people over there. It's a little bit different from the standpoint you have 101 people, and sometimes that gets a little louder than it is over the Senate side. It gets a little boring on our side. But both of them have their respective processes that they go through, and I've been tickled to death to serve in both of them, but we're glad to have had that opportunity. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Senator.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay in the back? My name is Mickey Dollins. I represent District 93 in South Oklahoma City in the House of Representatives. And I just want to give props to you for being here and doing this. It's something I wish I did growing up in Bartlesville, Oklahoma. I remember back then the only focus I had was football and school. And I remember I heard about this when I was in high school, but I thought it was a sporting event. And when I realized it was political stuff, I said, no thanks. But it was something I wish I would have done. I played football at SMU in Dallas, Texas. I tried out for the NFL. I ended up on the United States bobsledding team for 3 years. Came back to Oklahoma, went to work in the oil fields as a roughneck. I was a chain hand and did that for about 2 years, and then oil went bust. And so I used my English degree from SMU, and I became a teacher. And then in 2016, the governor cut education by more than any time in state history. And myself and 800 teachers were laid off. And so I went door to door and I ran on mental health, education, and economic diversification. And we've made progress in each of those. We still have a lot of work to do. Right now, my focus is on housing, giving Oklahomans priority in home ownership. There are some corporate landlords who would rather people rent the American dream than own it. And I'm working with my friends across the aisle and trying to come up with solutions. Other than that, I'm into tourism and, of course, education, and now more than ever, mental health. So glad to be here. Have fun with this. Ask us any questions. We'll mix it up here. And again, thank you for having me.
Now, my father served in the Senate, and he was a Democrat. And I think there were like 12 or 13 Democrats back then. They were few and far between. We really tried to balance out the stage today, but they are hard to come by sometimes. But what we hope to show you today is that even though they disagree, and there's been a lot of talk this week about party politics, even though they disagree, sometimes have very heated arguments and discussions, they're still gentlemen and statesmen, and that's one of the things we're trying to pass along to you today. You're going to see that they're friends, although they disagree on a lot of different topics. So keep that in mind, and we appreciate you gentlemen being here. And if you guys got some good questions, we will jump right in. All right, I saw the first one right here, second row. Go ahead.
My name is Kate Hopkins. I'm from Bethany. My question is, how do you feel about this recent school shootings? And how do we fix that not only in our state, but in our country?
Whoever wants to go first, jump right in.
I can be the first to take that. So, yeah, growing up in Oklahoma, of course, hunted, shot guns. I did my hunter safety course when I was 10 years old. People, of course, on my side of the aisle are real quick to say they want to ban guns or a new sale of guns. I don't believe in that. I do think there are some common sense measures we can take, like universal background checks, increasing the age from 18 to 21, So I think that there are some common sense solutions also, maybe limiting high capacity magazines. There are accessories that we regulate, like silencers, bump stocks, bayonets. So I think it should be on the table, but I don't think that we should jump to banning guns. In this political climate, I believe that would lead to more extremism, radicalization, and possibly and very likely more violence. So we have to honor the Second Amendment rights, but also do what we can to keep people safe and to keep guns out of the wrong people's hands.
Yeah, that's a great question, especially with the current environment. You know, as I drove over from Okmulgee today, I mean, there was another shooting in Tulsa that was going on. And, you know, as a legislator, you really have to think through these things. The problem is not the guns. It's mental health issues. It's these kinds of problems. So when it comes specific to schools, I mean, you are the most precious resource the state of Oklahoma has. I mean, our children are the most precious resource we have. And so we need to fortify those schools. We need to put security in the schools. We need to make sure that, I mean, we secure everything else, courthouses, the Capitol building, everything else. We need to make sure that nobody enters your school with a gun ever again for the rest of the history of this world and this country.
I honestly don't, with legislation, I don't know what legislation you're going to pass that's going to keep somebody that's going to do this ultimately from doing it. I mean, I don't care what laws we put in place. I'm a big advocate of mental health. My wife's a veteran. I'm a veteran. My wife's a mental health therapist. And so I don't know where the breakdown, I mean, I graduated high school in 1995. I never ever thought about taking a daggum gun to my school and shooting the daggum thing up. Never ever. And so I don't know where the breakdown in society has happened. I mean, a lot of it goes back to the house. I mean, I was so scared to screw up when I was a kid. My dad would have been 100 times worse than the principal ever would have been on me in school. And so I didn't screw up. And for some reason, there's a breakdown in the family, and people expect the schools to raise your kid and be a school and a counselor and a nurse and whatever else comes with being a teacher. And that sucks. There's a lot of additional mandates on the teachers from the federal side and the state side. But, I don't know what law that we could pass that would keep somebody from doing this. And so, it gets partisan. I mean, like Mickey said, he's not one, but there are some that from his side that want to take away all guns, want to ban guns. That's not the right answer. And so, certainly willing to have a conversation. I mean, there's a difficult conversation to have, and I'll never shy away from these conversations. But I just don't know what you could put in place would actually keep someone from going. If they're going to do this, they're probably going to do it regardless. I mean, they still have gun crimes in Australia. They outlawed guns there in 1994. So.
The gun's not the problem. We have a heart problem. We have a family problem. And we, as Mickey has stated, because of some of the environments that young people have grown up in over the last couple of decades, I think that there's some mental health issues that normally would not be there if we had moms and dads in the household. But it is a heart problem because I believe with all my heart, I want to be respectful of any of the families that have lost their loved ones, to be careful about what we say because they're suffering, they're hurting. But we could take every single gun away. Every single gun in this country, we could take it away, and there's going to be a weapon of some type when a person's heart is hurting so bad for whatever reasons that they decide that the person across from them, that their life is not of any value. When a person decides that they're going to take somebody else's life, there's a process that they go through that convicts them or convinces them that my issue, my wants, my desires, my reasonings is worth your life. So you take the guns away, do you take the knife away? Do you take the knife away, do you take the rock away? So I would tell you as a group of young men, to learn early on. Scripture tells us how we're supposed to treat our fellow man. It's not easy. But we're supposed to treat our fellow man like we want to be treated. We're supposed to we're supposed to love our fellow man the way that we loved. And the Bible goes on to say that Christ loved the church so much that he gave himself for it. And so I need you to realize that you, as a body, can start to change of changing the heart by changing the families.
Thank you, gentlemen. All right, next question. Right there. Go ahead. Yes, sir.
Alex Lobo from Pueblo, Oklahoma. I was wondering what you are going to do about the road conditions in Oklahoma. They are getting worse by the day.
Road conditions.
Are you talking about county roads or state roads? Or both?
All roads.
Well, years ago, we started what do we put in a year plan? $750 million a year? Roughly 650, 750 a year. And so we, when we came in, or years before we came in, honestly, I mean, the legislator got in the habit of passing a bunch of COLAs every year. And they would take out the first two places they would hit would be roads and bridges and teachers' retirement. And so at some point, we shored that up and we started taking off the top monies, which sometimes that's not good in itself because it's, we don't have control. I mean, we appropriate about 42% of the budget. And so there's almost 60% of the budget we can't touch, and that goes off the top. But a lot of those things that come off the top are things like roads and bridges. And so at one point, we had thousands of bridges in the state of Oklahoma that were structurally deficient. And so that's the first task that they took on. We started doing that off the top money with the 8-year plan. They started working on the bridges. So now I think we're down to less than 3% of bridges that would have to be, basically torn down and rebuilt. But we still have that money to keep them up, right? Even the ones we've redone. And so we're addressing it. It's probably not the answer you want to hear, but there's a lot of money. Like I said, $700 million goes off the top, and that's not including your county monies. They're funded by your gas tax. So if you got a good idea, brother, you should present it to your county commissioner, your state, your QAPA. So Steve Bayshore is your state rep. Give us Steve. And we're always willing to talk to constituents, no matter what topic it is. And so, but to your point, the roads have gotten a lot better, but they're not where they need to be.
Anybody else on roads?
I've been in the legislature for 12 years, and I would agree with you. When I came in 2010, there was a lot of structural deficiencies. At that time, it was almost 1,200 bridges that were deficient. They whittled that number down to around 100. That number has climbed because we've covered a 12-year period of time, but it is still much, much better than what it was. But I'll say this to you. On a local level, if we were able to take y'all on a tour around Rogers County, you would see that the county roads, the county bridges are in much, much, much better shape than surrounding counties. One of the reasons that that's the case is that they dedicated revenues through a sales tax a number of years ago, and they've continued to renew that. They see the benefit from that, so that always has kept our roads. People don't realize that when you pass a turnpike to Oklahoma City in 52, that just because you pay off what it cost us to build that road and the bridges associated with that, when you get it paid off, it's time to start working on it again. So you need to have that constant source. So your local county officials can have some avenues to help. But right now, the roads and bridges in the state of Oklahoma have never been better. I can take you to every corner of the state right now and everywhere in between and show you major, major projects. If you go out Highway 20, 20 has what they call Keatonville Hill. It was just a dream in 1995 when I moved here. And it's within a few months of actually being completed all the way to Highway 66. I'll stop there, but there's more to do, but there's ways of getting that accomplished.
Yeah, so I actually just was having this conversation before we walked in the room. And right now in the state of Oklahoma, we have a once-in-a-generation opportunity. We have an opportunity as leaders in the state of Oklahoma right now, contrary to the belief of the governor and contrary to the arguments and the miscommunication, the misfacts that the governor's putting out there. We went into special session as the legislature. We took $1.8 billion worth of ARPA funds that have been sent to the state of Oklahoma out of his control because we had been hearing from our constituents. And I'm sorry, I'm gonna rake on the governor a little bit tonight, if you don't mind. The governor talks about he represents all 4 million people in the state of Oklahoma. Well, so do we collectively. The difference between me and Governor Stitt is you have my cell phone number if you're a constituent of mine. You don't have Governor Stitt's cell phone. I hear from you, and we could take that $1.8 billion and instead of spreading it like mayonnaise, as the governor pointed out that he thought we would do, we could take that money and have once in a lifetime, generations from now would be able to see the impact that those ARPA dollars had on our municipal governments and our county governments and the infrastructure needs. While we're sitting here arguing about where to put those dollars, I have constituents that were with 3 weeks without water because we haven't updated our water systems. So roads, water, bridges, those are the things that we should be doing with the $1.8 billion that we just basically told the governor, you're not spending it without our authority because that's our job. And so we should be reaching out to our legislators, to Josh's point, and telling them, take those ARPA dollars and help our counties and our municipal governments get caught up because they can't do it otherwise.
Representative, can you explain what the ARPA dollars are? Where's that coming
So ARPA dollars are federal dollars that came to us, through the pandemic and those things, and it stands for American Relief.
I think you're talking about Biden bucks, right?
Well, yeah, whatever you
Big
wanna,
fan.
You call it whatever you want, but President Trump started that stuff right before Biden got elected, if you want to get into the partisanship of it. But they are dollars that the federal government sent to the states. They sent them to the counties, and they sent them to the municipalities. And the problem that I actually have is in my county, they decided to take their ARPA dollars and restore the courthouse, which is important. It's a historical building in our community. But right now, I got people who can't keep tires on their cars because they're driving down terrible roads. I got roads that were 3-4 weeks ago washed away, like completely washed away. There is no more road there from a flood. We should be using those dollars for infrastructure needs in the state of Oklahoma. And to the senator's point, and I'm glad our roads and bridges are better than they've ever been, but I don't know that that's really saying much.
And I think the only thing I could add to that is it's a great opportunity to connect with your local elected officials, your county commissioners, your local city council member. I know that your representative can connect you with them, but they're different jurisdictions, and for the most part, roads is a municipal issue.
Okay, gentlemen, I'm going to interject a topic real quick because I think you guys will find it interesting. I'm going to put you all on the spot just a little bit. Governor Stitt was here just a few days ago and spoke to this group, and I think he got a pretty warm welcome, but I understand there's some issues between the legislature and the governor's office. Anybody want to talk a little bit about those issues?
Well, this beef is between the Republican legislature and the governor, so I'll let my colleagues discuss it.
Imagine that. Huh?
Well, and I respect the position of the governor. I'm a military guy, and so when I was in the military, you serve with the pleasure of commander-in-chief. You're apolitical, but I'm not in the military anymore, and so and I respect the governor. And I guess my main issue with the governor over the last 3 years, when he was elected in November of 18, that first year was I think everybody agreed it was a honeymoon. I mean, we had the coffers were full in the state, and the state we had just. We were bouncing back from, we hadn't hit the big downfall with oil, but it was a good year that first year. And then we got into a lot of the travel stuff. And I remember in 2020, COVID had hit, and we went to the call of the chair back in March, and we ended up finishing session, but it was kind of, nobody knew what to expect. And nobody knew, we were dealing with the pandemic that none of us had experienced before. And so what started it was, he wanted to spend pretty much everything we had in savings, and the House and Senate got together. And we override a bunch of his vetoes is what we did. But I remember him doing weekly or daily press conferences and basically slamming us, saying that we were DC politics, DC liberals, and we kind of let it go, and I'm speaking for myself. I'm not speaking on behalf of any of these gentlemen with me, but personally I thought, well, we're dealing with something that we've never experienced before with the pandemic, and so we kind of let it slide and tried to repair some of those relationships. And then the next year we came back, and after that, in 2020, the voters passed Medicaid expansion, right? So the state fought it for years. The Republicans did. We fought it because there's no such thing as government funding anything. It's your tax dollars, your parents' tax dollars that pay for this stuff. But it went on a ballot, and it was a constitutional state question. So Medicaid expansion is now in the Oklahoma Constitution. So we don't have a choice but to fund that. And so we can't even, with the statutory, there's two types of state questions, the statutory and there's constitutional. With a constitutional state question, we can't make the changes to that. It has to go on a ballot. And so we're now tasked with implementing that Medicaid expansion. And so we had, we already have Sooner Care in the state of Oklahoma. And roughly, I think, roughly 1 million Oklahomans are on Sooner Care, right? And so he wanted to take the expanded population and run that through managed care. Well, there was and we don't all think alike. We probably disagree on some of the aspects of this, but our position was we already have Sooner Care in the state. It operates at a 4% over cost. We're going to run that Medicaid expansion through Sooner Care. Well, the governor had a plan to run it managed care through out-of-state insurance companies, and so we had ran a bill on the House side that said, no, we're going to take that money. We're going to ensure that we run it through Sooner Care. It's a 4% overhead versus a 15% cost of what the insurance companies were going to charge. Plus, we're already on the hook for 10%. It's a 90-10 match. And so we ran that legislation. That afternoon, my dad called me and said, what are you guys doing up there? And I said, what are you talking about, Dad? And so he did a press conference and basically said, I'm disappointed in the House Republicans for passing Joe Biden's liberal socialized agenda in the wee hours of the night. Well, it was late because we've been on the floor. It was deadline week, and so we were on the floor from 8 o'clock that morning. It was after midnight when we got off the floor that night. And so I had to, he went to calling us Joe Biden liberals, his family, his Republican family. And so, well, I had to come out and say something about it. And then last week, I felt like it was very punitive. We did pass a budget in the House and Senate, and it's just not, you're working with three different entities, the House, the Senate, and the governor, the executive branch, and so there's never a perfect budget. And so the budget that we agreed on, we passed that, and he came out with a message, did a press conference, and vetoed it, and basically said the same thing, calling us Joe Biden liberals, and I don't understand why that's always his go-to. If he'd have came out and said, hey, there's parts of this budget I don't like, and I'm going to veto these certain sections of it, and I want to come back with work with y'all. We're going to go back into special session. That's perfectly fine, but don't sit up there and to get people spun up and start calling us Joe Biden. So that was my riff with the governor, and so we will go into special session. We're already in special session. We call ourselves in a special session, and so we've got a choice when we come in on the 13th. We can gavel in and gavel out, or we can also expand our own special session to include that. Now he wanted a grocery tax in that. And then he wanted another income tax. Well, we cut an income tax, did an income tax cut last year, and we had passed several versions of the grocery tax. And so I think, I can sit up here and talk on this forever, but I'll let these guys jump in this thing.
I found it interesting you called it the honeymoon phase, which eventually turned into an abusive relationship and a power grab. But like all toxic relationships, one side fails to set boundaries. And would you agree that beginning in his tenure as governor, you gave him all of the control that he asked for at every move? The Republican legislature gave him more control, and then he took it and ran, and then all of a sudden y'all are like, hey, we didn't want this, but you allowed it.
Well, in the legislature, you try to have relationships, you try to work together and have good relationships. Out of 101 members, there's 18 Democrats. That's why you guys don't have much to say about anything. But we have to work with the governor. The governor betrayed the trust. I can talk for hours like Josh and everybody up here about this issue. But the problem with the governor is he thinks we work for him. And the bad news for him is I don't work for him. I work for you. And the problem with the governor is we have been working for over a year. I'm on the ARPA committee, and it's the House and the Senate. We have been working for over a year trying to figure out where these dollars need to go. And the governor was just waiting for us to get out of session because the president gave him control of those dollars, which we took control back. But as far as the budget goes in the special session and the issues we have, when you were in 5th grade, everybody in here I believe is a junior, when you were in 5th grade, there were 50,000 teachers at the state capitol in Oklahoma, and they were up there striking for a teacher pay raise. The governor constantly gets up in front of crowds of people across the state and says, look what I did. I got news for you. Governor Stitt wasn't even in office. You know what Governor Stitt was doing? doing while he was campaigning, he was calling me at 10 o'clock at night, asking me about teachers at the state capitol and what were we going to do. He wasn't fixing the problem. We up here fixed the problem. This is why we have a good savings account in the state of Oklahoma. This is why we took votes as Republicans that we didn't want to have to take, but we weathered the storm. And while he grandstands out there talking about how great he is, he didn't do a flipping thing but call me at 10:30 at night saying, what are y'all doing up there? Because he has no idea how government works and how he has to work with us, and that we are co-equal branches.
Senator Quinn.
I really didn't understand what he said, did you? The thing that I tell you, and all of us have our different traits, and for me, having been on the House and having been on the Senate, I've seen some governors do some good things, and I've seen them do some things that didn't make sense. But that's always going to be the case. The current governor came from a corporation mindset to where that he was the boss. I think that there's been a huge learning curve for him, and sometimes it's worked out well that he, had enough support that he was able to control an agenda item that was ported to him. But you got to remember that the Republicans are in charge of the House and the Senate and the executive branch. If you're on a football team, if you're on a basketball team or a baseball team, you're supposed to be working together. And there's always a battle behind the scenes of keeping selfishness in check, keeping attitudes in check, keeping that team spirit alive to where that you're all pulling in the direction. There's not any place harder to do that than in the political arena, because there's always that election around the corner. And sometimes people get more focused on that than what they should. But the governor, as the thing that I like about him, he's been willing to challenge some status quo. That's not always been the case. Now, maybe he's challenged the status quo in a way that would have worked better if he had changed his tactics. But I do think that the latest thing that the representatives have stated, it's a level of frustration, and with his background, being able to control more of the process than what he's able to control now is very frustrating for him. Representative West made the statement that if you disagree with something, the thing about politics is that any big piece of legislation generally takes a long time to get it across the finish line. So if a tax cut is what you want, if a different budget is what you want, then fight today and then live to fight tomorrow. But do it in a way that's professional, do it in a way that respects the people that you're working with. Because when you go down the line of, and passions are hard. I mean, you guys know what having that passion, that emotion is about. Sometimes it's not good for you to react with passion and emotion. You need to be controlled with it. And I do believe that the governor has allowed that passion and that emotion for him to say things that is hurtful to the representatives, to the House, and or to members of the Senate. And I always think that it's going to be, before you get to accomplish anything else of any importance, you're going to have to go back through and go through a healing process to show individuals that are on this stage and those that are back home that you do respect them and that you are willing to work with them in a professional way, and that's my take on it.
I would, if you don't mind, just real quick, just so you understand kind of the budget process and the role of the governor and our role as a legislature. The governor has constitutionally, he has two things that he really gets to say in the budget. He stands up on the first day of session, gives his State of the State address, And that's where he outlines his priorities to the legislature. Then we as the legislature take those priorities and we vet through those, as well as our priorities, and work between the House and the Senate. And then he has the opportunity to veto the budget. He is not necessarily, there is no law, there's no constitutional rule that says we have to let him in the room to negotiate. If he wants to be difficult, by the way, his chief negotiator on the budget this year that he has vetoed and said all this bad stuff about us, he went on his honeymoon right in the middle of the most important time of the session when it came to negotiations. That's fine. I understand you need to take your honeymoon. You got to keep mama happy. But don't blame us when you don't have a negotiator in the room and say we were cutting backroom deals.
Well, I guess since we're all taking digs at the governor, I'll get mine in. You mentioned he has challenged the status quo, and we agree. Yeah. If the status quo is challenging tribal sovereignty, every step of the way the governor has been disrespectful to the tribes, which is Oklahoma's very best friend. They employ so many people and do so many good things to people all around Oklahoma who aren't even tribal members, and I hope whoever's the next governor will remember that.
Yep. Amen.
Go back in the back. Right there at the glasses, yeah.
Considering the argument that just happened, as soon as you started mentioning bipartisan politics, you got angry. I was wondering if you think that that bipartisan system could be affecting your efficiency in releasing legislation.
Who wants to take that one?
I'll take it. You know.
I hope that I didn't. I hope that I haven't come across in any fashion of not being bipartisan. I have my standards. I have my values. I have my faith. I have things that I believe that our country was founded on, and I'm always going to stand up for those with my colleagues on the right or with my colleagues on the left. I say it that way for this reason. I think that whatever it is that representative believes in and thinks, that's the reason we live in America. He has that right to believe that. I also have the right to differ in that. But when we have an issue, I've known Representative Dollins since you were junior high, grade school, something like that. Have a great relationship with him, think the world of him. But our ideas are different. But I have a love in my heart for him as an individual. And I think that as a society that we can work on issues if we want to bad enough. He mentioned tribes. I didn't mention tribes. I said to challenge the status quo, but the status quo could just as be agency heads or whatever else it is that you want to put into that category. But the one that's made the headlines the most has been the tribal issue. But I still believe in Oklahoma. I still believe that there are a lot of wonderful people in Oklahoma. And when you take the selfish component out that says, I want this and I want this, and this person over here says, I want this and I want that, at some point in time, if your ultimate goal is to move our country, our state, and our nation forward, then every side's going to have to give in some degree. So I'm not sure that I have answered your question, but from my standpoint, I want you to know that I prefer, in a professional, productive manner, to address the issues in a way that is productive and not harmful.
Can I add to that real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because while we may not like each other's ideas, for the most part, we like each other. And I will say something positive about the governor. He's the great unifier. At first, he unified all of the tribes against him. And now he's unified Democrats and Republicans in the House and Senate together against him. So, Governor Stitt, the great unifier, everyone.
Yeah, baby. So to your question, just real quick, this won't be a rant. Don't mistake passion for anger. Because up here on you can tell that there's a vast difference between the House and the Senate. I mean, we're very rambunctious. We're Well, yeah, it's like daycare versus the nursing home. I mean, you go to the Senate to retire, you get born into the House. But don't mistake, because Mickey and I are really good friends. I took the majority leader, the new majority or minority leader out for her birthday dinner just 2 weeks ago. So we get along. Don't mistake passion for anger, because that's one of the problems in our country, is if you disagree with me, then I hate you. And if you take anything at all away from this, take this away. We can disagree vehemently with one another on policy and issues, and Mickey and I do. But at the end of the day, I can take Mickey to dinner and we can have a great time and talk about family and what we have going on this interim. And Mickey he came to me just 3 weeks ago and said, "Hey, I'd like to talk to you about this housing issue." And he knows right out of the gate that I probably have some differences of opinion. So don't mistake passion for anger, because none of us are angry up here.
And I would say that, so there's 101 reps in the House, and there's 48 senators in the Senate, and so we all represent our own individual district, and so I represent a red district, and that's how I vote. If I can go to church on Sunday and I can't get 10 people to agree with me where to go eat lunch after church, so you take 149 people and try to get them to agree on one thing. It's not going to happen. So there's always an element of compromise. I mean, I got to compromise with that, with outside of my faith and my moral compass. I got to compromise on a lot of things with my marriage and even with my kids to a certain extent. But I remember when we came in 2016. I mean, there was a guy I could not stand. I mean, I hated his guts and livers. It was Colin Walkie. I'm a military guy. He's an MMA guy, and so I couldn't stand the guy. And then we came. Our first session, we got put into, we were a normal session, then we went 2 back-to-back special sessions, and then and then 18 came along, and we were in concurrent session, and we were in special session and regular session. We had a teacher walk out, and I remember sometime in one of those special sessions, I was eating somewhere, and Walkie happened to be there, and we started talking, and I really wanted to hate the guy, but 6 years later, he's one of my best friends in the world. We still vote different, we still think different, and the bottom line is my constituents can't vote for Colin. His constituents can't vote for me. I still vote. I represent my district, but a lot of y'all get your political opinions, from your parents or whether they watch Fox or CNN. And so I would tell you that, go have conversations, like I said before, with people who don't think like you, don't look like you, don't talk like you. It usually backs up my own position. I mean, Colin and I do a podcast called Inside the Capitol. It's on Spotify. And there's never an agenda. We just talk about tough topics, and we don't ever have anything written down. It's a free flow podcast. But I want people to see that, hey, I can sit down across the table from Colin Walkie on an ideal or a topic that we disagree with, and I don't have to sit on stage and call him a piece of crap, And that's the thing. I look at D.C. a lot of times. Hell, they haven't passed a budget since 1997. And so if I look at what we have to do in the state of Oklahoma, I mean, we're constitutionally, our main job is to pass a budget. We're constitutionally mandated to balance the budget, and we can't print money out. And so that's the difference between us and the federal government, is they don't even print money out anymore. They just push a button on the computer. And so, but the reality is that they don't get anything done. They get up there and talk a lot and talk about how bad the other side is, but they don't get anything done. And so I want Oklahoma to know that you have a functioning government, despite our differences. As Marty said, we still live in a great state. We still live in a great country. And I was in the military for a long time. Then after that, I got out and did private security contracting work. And I've been in some shady countries where, they still ride donkey carts as a form of transportation. And so I look at the poorest of the poor that we have here, and I look at those people over there, and it always makes me, I'm happy to live where I do. I've seen things and done things that would blow your mind, and I always am proud to be from Oklahoma. I'm proud to be from the United States. So it doesn't have to be that way. I think partisanships, it's good to be bipartisan on some things, but we're always going to be partisan. There's always going to be, there's other parties besides Republican, Democrat, but it's a two-party system. And so, but it's important to at least hear your people out that don't think like you and don't necessarily agree with you. And usually, like I said, it usually backs up my own position. Oh, John Eccles.
So y'all were just in special session. I was up there a little bit, and y'all are going back into special session. Why is that? Why did you call it the first time? Why is the governor calling it? What are y'all hoping to get done on that?
Well, Scott talked about it before. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so as I was mentioning earlier, the legislature called its own special session to deal with the ARPA dollars, the $1.8 billion dollars that the governor has control of up until this point. And then the governor vetoed the budget because he wanted us to pass the grocery tax, inflation relief. And I don't think anybody on this stage disagrees that we need inflation relief. One of the particular issues, though, with inflation relief is because we have to constitutionally pass that balanced budget, we have to be very careful because remember, I told you, we all passed, while the governor was running for office, we had to go take tough votes and raise taxes. So that's revenue coming into the state. Now we're saying we want to take that money back out, which I'm open to that conversation. I don't want high taxes, but we have to be careful or we'll have 50,000 teachers back at the Capitol in a few years and we'll all be gone and you could be sitting in our seats and having to deal with those budget shortfalls. When we came into office, not Senator Quinn, but us other three in the House, we were $1.4 billion in a budget shortfall and had billion-dollar budget shortfalls leading up to that time.
Anybody else on that topic? All right. Let's go over here. Go ahead, right there.
So, I'm sorry to get back on the governor's skit, but this is something I've been following closely. What is your take on his falling out, so to speak, with Hoffmeister, the state superintendent that flipped parties?
The reality is that we live in Oklahoma, and Hoffmeister will not be governor. So I imagine that she's probably kicking herself in the butt that she changed parties. And so, like I said, I don't hate the governor. I wish that he would, if he'd have said, I had no problem if he did a press conference and said, hey, there's elements of this budget I don't like. I'm going to veto these elements right here, and I'm going to bring y'all back into special session, and I want to work with you. But he got all crazy like he always does and started calling us liberal Joe Biden supporters and things like that. So, I don't know why Hoffmeister changed parties. I mean, the first two times she ran for state superintendent, you can look at her material that was put out, and she seems like she's ruby red. She's the golden girl of the Republicans. So I don't know how you can flip that much. I mean, I think she saw an opportunity, and I think ultimately she probably wants to run for mayor of Tulsa eventually, but to keep her name relevant. But Hoffmeister's not going to be governor. And she's probably, like I said, she's probably with everything that's gone on with some of the stuff with Swadley's and stuff that just looks like it's not transparent. There's obviously an investigation going on. I would imagine that she's probably thinking, man, I wish I'd just stayed a Republican, but who knows? I can't speak for her.
Yeah, I think that's a great question because while I can't speak on behalf of Superintendent Hoffmeister, I think it is a reflection of how a lot of moderate Republicans probably feel about the party and the direction it's headed right now with extreme legislation. I think any time a party has so much control, a super majority where they rely zero on the minority party to just ram through legislation, you start seeing this policy that's not polling popular with the people of Oklahoma. And so whether it's a lack of transparency, corruption, policy that goes to the extreme, I think that maybe she had flipped just like a lot of other Oklahomans are flipping, not necessarily to Democrat, but to independent. Independents are on the rise because they don't want extremism from either side. It's human nature when you get so much power to just keep pushing it to the very max. And unfortunately, that's what we've got in Oklahoma, and that's why so many people are going independent. But to your question, why did she go Democrat? I can't speak on behalf of that. I just know that's how a lot of Oklahomans feel.
Let's just set the record straight. Joy Hoffmeister was a Democrat before she was a Republican and went back to being a Democrat. You can go back and check her voter rolls on that. Blame Trump.
No, I said like Trump.
Oh, like Trump. Well, hey, it is what it is. But why she flipped back, it made no sense because in rural Oklahoma, she has no shot as a Democrat. And my colleague here talks about extreme policies, and it's not extreme policies. We only vote on what our constituents ask us to vote for. Whether he thinks they're extreme or not, it doesn't matter to me. All I really care about when it comes to my voting record, I don't have a yellow button. I don't have a yield button. I have a red button. I have a green button. I have to make a choice on every bill that comes across the desk. And I push yes or no. And I base those votes on what your you and your parents' feedback is. So his district is completely different than mine. And while we make decisions that affect the entire state, we focus on what our people want. But as far as why Hofmeister flipped, I have no idea. But to Josh's point, I think she has no shot.
Well, to Representative Fettgetter's point, you do. You have a red and you have a blue, and if it affects you financially or personally, you can take constitutional privilege, which excuses you from the vote. So you essentially each time have two votes there. I'm sorry, I forgot the point I was going to make with that.
There is no
Let
blue
me
button,
circle
though.
back. No, go ahead. It'll come back to me.
This is why we don't let Democrats talk. Nah, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. That's a joke.
Remember. Okay, I got it. Go ahead. After you, Senator.
The Senate takes pride in its decorum, as you can tell, right, Senator?
Yeah. Only Hofmeister can say why she did, but I'm not afraid to state my opinion. She did it for political reasons and political reasons only. It's why that she switched parties. She thought her chances of being governor were better on that side than she did the other side, and that's why she did it. Now, if you truly believe that the reason that she decided to go to the other party, which in America and in Oklahoma, that is exactly why we live where we live. But you get up and you make your case that this is the reason. These are the values in the Democrat Party that I want to embrace that I could not embrace on the Republican side. I'll tell you a little secret. When I registered as an 18-year-old, I registered as a Democrat. I grew up in Southwest Arkansas. When you wanted to vote for the sheriff, when you wanted to vote for the county judge, when you wanted to vote for the local things, at that time the state of Arkansas was a very Democrat state. It was also a conservative state, but you had to register as a Democrat if you wanted to vote. Now, when it came to the 1992 election, my former governor, Bill Clinton, was running for president. I had seen enough of his actions that was not who I wanted to be my president. So I switched parties to the Republican Party, and I've been there ever since. Now, that's not to take a slide against President Clinton, because he's one of the smartest presidents that we ever had. And had he used all of his skills and all of his talents and focused on the people that he represented, he could have been one of the greatest presidents that we ever had, because he did a lot of good things in his time in his office, but he also did some things that he shouldn't have done because his focus was not on the people, his focus was on himself. So I would tell her, you state your case. This is why that I'm going to the Democrat Party, and this is what I didn't like about the Republican Party, but I promise you it was a political reason that those actions was taken.
Thank you, Senator. I'd like to circle back to what I was going to say, and even representatives have slip up sometime. But you have the red and the green, but it's not like this extreme legislation is coming from constituent requests. There's an organization called ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council, that manufactures basically pre-made bills that you can put your name, your state, and then file it and legislate. And that type of model legislation takes all deliberation, debate, critical thinking out of writing bills, and we see more of that than I'd like. I would love for there to be transparency on the bills of exactly where it came from. Is it an original thought? Is it a constituent request? Is this a model legislation that's being run across the country in every GOP-controlled state with a United States agenda behind it? That type of legislation is what's dangerous, because it takes all critical thought out of writing a bill.
And to Marty's point, when he was talking about, he registered as a Democrat when he was 18, Oklahoma's always been a conservative state. Back in the day, for 100 years, it was a blue state. But a lot of the, especially rural Oklahoma, a lot of the old blue dog Democrats. There's a few left, right? I mean, there's about. My district changed from about 85% Democrat pre-2008 to now it's 52% Republican, 35% Democrat, and 11% Independent, and 2% Libertarian, I think. But a lot of the rural parts of the state, those blue dog Democrats have changed over to Republican, and so that was, there's a few holdouts And the reason they're, back in the day, like Morty said, if you wanted to vote for your county commissioners or your sheriff or any of those local elections, you had to be a Democrat. But where I am, that's changed now. The representatives are Republican, and both the senators in my area are Republicans and the county commissioners. And so that's just kind of a trend in rural Oklahoma for sure.
I just want to address Representative Dolan's statement. Representative, you know that often on the House floor, whenever a bill is run on the House floor, it is asked on the House floor or in committee, where did this bill come from? Was it a constituent request? Was it an agency request? We often ask where that comes from. I can tell you, I have never, ever heard but maybe one guy stand up and say, this was an ALEC request. That's just rhetoric.
If you want to go to my representative page, Mickey Dollins, you can see video from the floor of ALEC legislation being ran. And no, they're not going to say this is sponsored by ALEC. That'd be stupid. But what Representative Fugate from Del City did was display like 3 other exact states that ran the exact legislation that's basically Mad Libs for policy, and that's not right.
Well, while I understand your point, it's not uncommon for different legislators from different states to have similar ideas and similar thought processes from constituents. You're basically pointing out, saying that special interest is running the state, is kind of your point. But when we were in redistricting, the only thing that the Democrats offered up as the redistricting map was absolutely, and it's proven, that it was special interests that had given you all the plan for redistricting. We had open, transparent meetings, town hall meetings, and bipartisan meetings, and you guys offered up a redistricting map that was absolutely 100% created by special interests.
Andy Moore, I think Andy Moore with Let's Fix This did you guys, that's who was running the group that, your side that wanted the redistricting change from the Ds.
Senator.
The Representative Dollins mentioned ALEC. There's a number of those institutions across the U.S. that they have their agenda. ALEC is a more conservative agenda. Southern SLC is a more moderate group that they represent their agenda. You have
NCSL?
You have a number of those, and they all have their agendas, but that's really not any different than when you get to the Capitol and you have the special interest groups or the lobbyists that are working the angle on their issues. And some of those issues are more moderate, some of them are more conservative, and it's obvious that people that believe in a conservative agenda are going to push from that direction, and those that are from a more moderate angle will push from that direction. So the truth to me is that many times in that process, there's been some good legislations come out from all of those organizations. But it's natural when we believe or think or hold true to certain things, it's hard for us to get out of that box, and we start the process of kind of pointing the finger at this group or that group. But at the end of the day, nobody is going to force me to vote for a piece of legislation that ALEC sponsored or SLC or any of the others that I don't think that benefits the constituent base that I have back home.
Okay, we're going to take one more question, and then we're going to give the legislators a chance to give some closing remarks. Right there. Talk loud for us, okay?
I'm down with it. Now, you know, we have the ability right now in Oklahoma. I think we passed legislation in 2017 that your schools can have teachers that carry. If the school board votes that they want to allow that, they can. They would have to go to some training. And then most schools, at least in my district, they have resource officers, school resource officers that act as both the security as well. And so I've seen that. I've seen a lot of different. I've been in the military, a lot of different veterans groups that I'm involved in. They've talked about specifically legislation like that. And I don't know if the general public would, you know, support that with, you know, if I was walking around my school with an AR, but I would love it. But, you know, like I said, they already have the capability right now for teachers to create. A lot of rural districts do. You can go to Locust Grove, that's in my district. There's several little schools in my district that have a big sign outside the school that says this is teachers are armed essentially and will take appropriate measures, you know, to ensure the safety of their students.
So I'm curious, why combat veterans and not school resource officers like we already have? So if you think they're ineffective, why not just increase or improve training?
So I love that you're putting thought process into to this scenario, right? But so you're getting asked questions now, like we would be asking each other. So the question is how do you pay for that? Who pays for that? Well, congratulations to you for thinking through this process and actually putting a fiscal number to it, which a lot of my colleagues should really learn to do as well. Anybody else have anything on that?
I would just tell you that we've got to solve the issue. We can no longer sit back and allow hospitals, schools to be soft targets. You don't see these shooters going to the police station. You don't see them going into difficult areas where that they feel like that there's going to be people responding with appropriate response. But I do think that our students, I think that our teachers, administrators, we've made a lot of investment with them over the years, and I think that they deserve protection. We no longer fly the way that we used to fly. We have to go through those detectors. We have to go through all these different spots. I don't like that, but I also don't like the fact that it made it easier for the terrorists. And again, I think that it goes back to the society that we're living in. We need to change our families. We need to change our heart. But until those things are accomplished, we've got to be able to make sure that people know that this is the only door that you're going to enter in. And for you to go through these doors, here are the steps. And on the other side of this, you're going to have the best, well-trained individuals. You know, I like the idea that you're thinking out of the box that it could be a veteran. But I'd also like to make sure that the person behind that door is as well trained as possible so that when they respond at the highest level possible. At the end of the day, when you go through, for example, we do interim studies all the time to find out what is the plan that we're going to have, and let's say that there's 5 components to it, and each one of these 5 steps is going to cost us X dollars. And at the end of the day, whatever that dollar amount is, I believe, you know, and I'm not speaking for anybody else, but I do believe at the end of the day, it's an investment that we've got to make in our schools, but I also think that there's other soft targets that will be in the private realm that government should not step into, that there's an obligation that they have to protect themselves. And he's already, Representative West has already mentioned the school, but there's also a lot of private properties that you cannot bring in a gun because that's their property. So I think it's possible for us to solve that issue, and I really appreciate the thought process you've went through, but it is something we can't think about, we can't talk about, we've got to do something about.
We have time for one more, right there.
Sorry for making answer many questions. Sorry for my voice, but I'm curious, what are your personal opinions on what the law should be for abortion?
So I've been talking about this quite a bit lately, and I would just like to point out that the party of so-called limited government and personal freedom has turned into the party of intrusion. I don't think government should be in our bedrooms, in our doctor's offices, in bathrooms. I think you should let people be and let them make that decision between them and their healthcare provider.
Well, I would say that it's no surprise that this bill passed. I mean, I've ever not voted for a pro-life bill. Have you ever seen a Republican, with the exception of maybe one, that didn't vote for these pro-life bills? And so, like I said, we all represent, in the House about 40,000 people, and in the Senate about 90,000 people. So I'd never take a vote. It's I may agree with what I'm voting on, but I never take my personal opinion on that vote. And so, the bill that passed this year, there were exemptions: rape, incest, life of the mother. And that's always something I've actually fought to get in there as a parent of two daughters and as a mental health therapist, as a spouse. I do hear the stories about 10, 11-year-old kids that have gotten pregnant and can't physically carry a child. And so, it's a toxic subject. The media likes these types of things because it's sexy. You guys like to talk about it. Your parents like to see it. They like to see the fights, and they like to see it going back and forth. But it's I'm very confident in my vote on that, and then I would vote for it every time. And like I said, I represent my district and not Mickey's. And so that's the great thing about our country, is that we are free to have our own opinions on this type of stuff.
Go ahead. Obviously, I'm a pro-life individual. I value life at every phase, whether it's in the beginning stages or whether it's in the latter stages. I think that's one of the things that's happened to our society, is that we have devalued life. It makes it easy for us to come up with reasons why that we can walk into a school and take life, is because it's been devalued in many, many aspects of that. And we're not going to be able to follow you guys around for the next 10, 15, or 20 years. But I doubt very seriously that once you find an individual, a lady that you are willing to fight and defend for, that you're willing to lay down your life for, and you start that process of a family, I believe with all my heart that you will start valuing life more. When you have that son or when you have that daughter that comes to you, and you realize, how does this happen? How could something this precious be mine? And I think that your opinion is probably going for a lot of you, maybe not all of you, but I think that that's going to change over time. But I want to add this last component. When you take the life of an unborn, what you've done is you've taken something. And I'll even use, for example, a difficult situation. Maybe the person is very, very young and scared to death on whether they'll be able to follow through with the responsibilities. We've taken God out of our school. We've taken we've taken prayer out of our school. We're no longer valuing a standard of truth, and so we can justify anything. And when we take that away, what we've done is we have taken a situation where we may be calling it a tragedy, that this is what happened to this individual, and we've taken God out of that equation, and He could take that tragedy and turn it into a triumph. And you just think about all the people that did not make that choice, that came from horrible situations. And because of their mindset, because of their determination, they went on to greater things. And that's the thing that I would tell you, is value life at every opportunity that you have.
I would say to quote, I believe, President Reagan, I noticed that everybody who was pro-choice was alive. And so I'm pro-life. I believe in life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And I believe that an unborn child has the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This whole unwanted pregnancy stuff, I've heard that like over the past 3 or 4 weeks. Well, unwanted pregnancy. Hey, look, it doesn't matter if you wanted to be pregnant or not pregnant. It doesn't matter if you wanted a child or didn't want a child. You went through the process as a consenting adults, potentially. There were problems, and I think there's some concessions that Representative West talked about, rape, incest, and the life of the mother, that we need to have deeper conversations. But just because you went out and was partying it up on Saturday night, hooked up with your friend from high school, and you got pregnant, doesn't give you the right to kill that child. Period. End of story.
I guess I just have to call out some of the cognitive dissonance I'm hearing here. So we have determined this session that life begins at fertilization, yet we won't hear a bill that requires child support payments to begin at
I'll
the
run
moment
that bill.
Okay, at fertilization. All right, Representative Forrest Bennett will co-author it with you. So I think that just a lot of people, they hear the GOP and they say, if you're preborn, you're all good. If you're pre-K, good luck. Because if you look at our metrics with other states when it comes to health outcomes for women, opportunities for children, we're dead last. What are we doing? What is the plan? I just interviewed a Senate candidate for U.S. Senate. I said, what is your plan to help women and children? We're gonna improve the foster care system. Okay, well, there's 5,000 kids right there who need help right now. What else you got? No answer. So once they start putting as much attention on that child before they're born or at fertilization, and then if they start acting like that when that child is actually born, then maybe I could take them serious.
Well, I'm sorry, I gotta get in here. I'm gonna tell y'all a story. I don't talk about this a whole lot, but when I was your age, I got a girl pregnant. I did. And guess what? Her mom and dad made her have an abortion. You know who didn't have any say in that? You know who had to live his whole life knowing that he had an aborted child as a way of birth control? Me. You know what? So I get a little bit passionate. I have a granddaughter that's 5 years old. Her mother stood in front of me and my wife when she was a newborn child and said, I should have had an abortion. It's not fair. And if you want to hold men responsible, give them say in that opportunity as well. Because my girlfriend that I got pregnant, I had no say as the father. I couldn't say to her, have the child. I will be responsible and raise that child. We live in a state where if you're pregnant and I punch you in the gut and it kills you and the baby, that's double murder. It's ludicrous. Unwanted pregnancies can't. So we should have the right to abort these children. It's out of control.
I'm sorry to hear that. It is. I truly am sorry to hear that. But what so many Oklahomans hear when you say that is they hear you say, don't tread on me, but I'll tread on thee. Because I had an adverse experience with a very personal decision. I'm going to seek redemption and maybe validation from the Lord and try to prevent other people from doing it. Don't tread on people. Let them be.
I understand that, but that unborn child is a person too that has the right.
It's not government. It's between them and their pastor and their doctor.
But if we're going to say that, then we have to say if I punch you in the gut and you're a pregnant woman and I kill you and the child, we can't charge 2 murders for that.
I can, okay. Well, one is already against the law. Okay, and yeah, this summer, Roe will likely be overturned. Right? But when it comes to so many of these anecdotal stories, yeah, punching someone is against the law, right? What one person chooses to do with their reproductive rights is another thing. So that's just a straw man argument right there.
There you go.
It may not be government, but the minute that they start to have one of those abortions, they want the government to pay for them. You got to decide one way or the other.
That's right.
So I'm curious, what are your thoughts on Plan B if life begins at fertilization? Is the morning after pill murder?
You're the one that defined when life begins in this conversation, so you tell me.
Well, actually, your colleague, Representative Wendy Stearman from Bartlesville, just passed legislation that you voted yes on that defined it that at fertilization. We have the most restrictive abortion ban in the United States that you voted yes on.
I think it's great, actually, because I believe that once that sperm penetrates that egg, that there is a life being formed. And if you go look at the process of a child from the time of conception till they're born, it's a very rapid process in which that happens.
So morning after pill is murder.
I didn't say that was murder, but you don't know. It doesn't. We don't know exactly when that egg is penetrated by the sperm. It can take up to 3 days.
It could be premeditated then.
Say again.
It could be premeditated. I mean, it's impossible to tell. That's why the legislation, you're proving my point, is ridiculous, because you're defining life at fertilization. So that's why there's just so many logical holes in the legislation itself.
Well, if there's holes, then we can have that discussion. But yours, when do you say life begins? With the day they're born?
I'm going off of current statute that's already signed into law.
I'm sorry?
I'm basing the definition off of current statute that's already signed into law.
I'm asking when you determine what is your definition of the life of a child?
That's deflection, because the issue at hand is the bill that was just signed into law.
No, the issue was we live in a state where if you run over a woman and an unborn child because you were drunk and you kill them, it's double manslaughter.
I think the issue here, and I don't want to get too far off in the weeds, but I think you see with extreme legislation, there becomes more issues at hand. Next up, it could be IUDs, it could be birth control, it could be the morning after pill that starts getting banned. I just did an interview with a large organization that truly believes it's immoral to take birth control and have the morning after pill, and they're trying very hard to ban it in other states. So you see the issue with extremism is there's no end game. It just goes on, and that's dangerous.
So answer my question. When does life begin?
I'm not a doctor, Scott. You need to go talk to your healthcare provider.
You have to write these laws.
Hey, if you'll hear my laws, if you'll hear my bills, then we can have that conversation.
We've heard your bills.
We get the red and the green, as you said, and we get to vote on the bills that the floor leader puts up. So we're talking about the issue at hand, not hypotheticals.
But it's not hypothetical. When a person is pregnant and they're murdered, when is it life? When can they be charged for murder?
That's a subjective, hypothetical.
This is why we get nowhere.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a philosophy right there, okay? That's a philosophy class. And what we had at hand was a bill that defined life at fertilization. So that is the buck stops there.
Is this thing on? I never regretted saying one more question ever so much.
Let's keep going.
We could do this all night long, but we are running out of time, and I would like to give the legislators a chance to give some closing statements to you before they leave, and then we've got some gifts for you all, of course, as usual, and then I'll wrap it up after you. Want to take a couple minutes to give closing statements?
Yeah, like I said, I appreciate y'all coming here and spending the week here. You know, it's a great example for your peers. So take what you learned here and use it and build off of it, use it as a motivation. And I was talking to my wife the other day. There's a breakdown with your generation about adversity. And I don't know where it is. I'm not saying that my generation was a tough generation, but use these experiences and come up with different avenues of approach to get through life, because you've got a different set of adversities than I had. You got a cell phone or a computer in your pocket with everything you do. And remember that, when we hire LAs or EAs or we get people to come page for us, first thing we do is look up your social media and the stuff that you guys are putting out. So I would say every day I use, I was shot 3 times in Iraq in 2003, October 16th, 03 in Kerbala, Iraq. I shot my legs, stomach, had a traumatic brain injury, and spent about a year and a half in the hospital, in and out of the hospital, surgeries, and I get pissed off every stinking day when I get out of the shower and I see big scene graphs. But I use that as motivation for my troops. You know, I think 3 soldiers got killed that night. They can't be there to have good days or bad days, and so I use that as motivation. It's how I handled that myself with adversity. But like I said, I hope that you met some people that aren't like you and got to like I said, have those conversations with people that differ from you, just like Mickey and Scott here. And so thanks for taking the time to come here this week, and it is a great example to your peers, and I hope you build up on this and go do good things. I hope you guys replace us someday, and whenever that time is. So enjoy the rest of your week.
Well, I want to thank the American Legion, Boys State, and each one of you for having us here. I mean, as you can tell, it got heated up here between the House members. But I think the thing that I would like for you to take away is, A, I don't hate Governor Stitt. He actually is a nice guy, as you saw yesterday. He just is flawed in some of his thought processes as how this all works. But B, Mickey and I are going to walk out of here, and we're going to have a phone conversation. We're going to have lunch together. We're going to have conversations. He's going to run a bill, and Mickey, I don't mind running your bills in my committee, and you know that, and that's all I control is my committee. But the most important thing is, as heated as this may have seemed to you, it can get more heated on the floor. But the most important thing is Mickey, please don't take this and put a tweet about this, okay? If you don't mind, we don't need to tweet. You stay off this social media junk. Social media is just warping your minds as far as what the real world of politics is about. The real world of politics is about Mickey and I. We were raised different. We have different life experiences, and we were brought up by different parents. And that's what molded our ideals and thought processes. So instead of getting to the fight on social media and losing friends and family members over politics, learn to listen to each other, because at the end of the day, I have the utmost respect for Representative Dolan's, and I know he's doing the best he can to represent his constituency. God bless you. God bless the state of Oklahoma, and thanks for having us.
Senator Brooks, am I going to get to talk tonight? Because if we're gonna cut that out, I want to say something. For the sake of time, I'll let you take my time away if I get to say what I want to now. Go for it. What I want y'all to consider through the folks that are in charge of this, I think we need to have a trial. We're going to put y'all into a petri dish, and we're going to watch you for the next 5 years, the next 10 years, the next 15 years, the next 20 years. And we're going to come back and we're going to see what happened to whatever segment of the population that we run that test on. And the reason I say that to you is there's no way that you showed up in this room without having a tremendous amount of potential. Just didn't happen. Somebody thought enough of you to say, you know what, this young man needs to go to Boys State. I think Boys State would be beneficial to him. So what are you going to do with it? You can't, and please, I'm joking when I say this, but please don't be a smart aleck kid the rest of your life. Okay? Don't be that. But guess what? When I was your age, I was bad. But here's the thing. I had a filthy mouth. I had a nasty mouth. There wasn't a dirty joke that I couldn't tell. And I could tell them good. But guess what? I finally figured out how stupid I sounded when I used 4-letter words. And I also noticed that when I was around my dad, just like that, I didn't have any trouble with those 4-letter words. I noticed when I was in college, I don't know why, it wasn't any particular incident, but you named the word, and some of them were more than 4-letter words, I used them. Until one day I realized how ignorant that I sounded. I always believed in the good Lord above. But it was me realizing that the people around me was not quite enjoying that filthy talk as much as, quote, I used to be. And I did it because I was trying to be cool. I was trying to be like the next guy. But I want to know what happens to you. I want to know what you have done with the talents that put you here tonight. I want to know what you do with them 5 years from now. Do you use them? Do you waste them? The Bible talks about that. You can use the Constitution. You can use any history book that you want to use. The only place that you're going to go and have something that never fails you, as good a guy as Mickey is, at some point in time, if him and I spend a lot of time together, me or him are going to fail one another. There's going to be a time that the pressure is on, and I'm not going to tell completely all of the truth because I don't want to disappoint him. My standards are going to change just a little bit because I can't stand the pressure that I'm under. But when you know that there's a standard of truth, when you know that there's a way that will never fail you, and you apply your life towards that direction, the potential that you have is unlimited. Nobody can stop you. And that's what I want you to leave with. I don't know if they'll ever take that to the next level and do something. I know that it would cost money. But somehow, some way, we need to know what happens to you 5 years from now and 10 years from now. But I know that every single one of you are capable of rising above wherever it is that you are in life right now. I'm proud that I've had this opportunity. I hope that you are proud that you've had this opportunity and you make the very most of it.
That was very well said. I've got all the respect in the world for the people on this stage. Representative West and Representative Fettgeider and I came in together in 2016. And I've known Senator Quinn since I was a little kid. I actually used to go to school here in Claremore, 7th and 8th grade, and I used to go to school in Skytook, but I ended up graduating Bartlesville. And when I look around, and I suppose you're all juniors, correct? So you're going into your senior year. I'm sure people are starting to ask, then what? Some of you may have it all figured out, some of you may not. And if you don't have it all figured out, it's not that fun. It can be nervous. It can be nerve-wracking. I know each week we have pages come to the Capitol, and these are like the top kids in their class. Some of you have probably paged. I know you have. Some of you said you have. Each time, about 75% of them know exactly what they want to do, and then the 25% are still trying to figure it out. These are the top kids in their class. And they can feel a little insecure if they don't know exactly what their next move is going to be. I was in that boat. All I knew in high school was I need to get a football scholarship. I needed to get good grades. I needed to stay out of trouble. I didn't know what was going to happen after that. My team won one game my senior year. My head coach was fired. I looked up in the yellow pages for a wedding videographer and started making highlight tapes and just sending them out and cold calling coaches all over the country. I got one coach to give me a shot at Missouri State. At the time, it was a D2 school. I guess it validated me as an athlete, and then Louisiana Monroe, Colorado State, and then SMU offered me. And I didn't know where I was going to go. I went to SMU, so then I knew what my next step was going to be. And then guess what? I achieved this lifelong dream, and guess what the next question was? Then what? What are you going to study? What are you going to do after that? So I said, okay, I'm going to help younger kids like me earn football scholarships. So I wrote a book on how to market yourself, specifically for football. I majored in English, creative writing. My professors would edit chapters, and by the time I graduated, I had a manuscript. Okay, then what? Well, I was going to go work straight for an oil and gas company. My younger brother died, and he had always wanted me to try out for the NFL. So then guess what? Tried out for the NFL. Didn't make it. But then the USA bobsledding team came and asked if I wanted to be on the Olympic bobsledding team. I said, where do I do that in Oklahoma? No, you have to come up to Lake Placid, New York, and then if you're good enough, you can travel across seas. In my last year, I got to do that. It opened up my eyes. I would encourage everyone in here. When I was young at your age, I didn't have the opportunity to travel, but I'm glad I got that opportunity. So then I came back to Oklahoma. Then what? Well, I guess I'll go work for that oil and gas company. But at that time, oil was tanking. And I was supposed to spend 3 months in the field and then come back and work in the office in Oklahoma City. 3 months turned into a year and a half. We laid over the rigs. We were all laid off. I went and became a teacher. Then what? I bought a house down the road. Then what? Education cuts happened and I was laid off. So then I come to this another fork in the road. I'm going to run for office for people like my brother, mental health issues, economic diversification for people like my friends on the rig, and education so no other teacher would get laid off like I did. And I ran for office. And I got in, and then I've had several other jobs since then. I do mortgage lending, and I own an insurance agency now. So I'm still figuring out. The point of the story is know your next move and go toward that with everything you've got. Because if you don't know the next 3 moves, it'll become apparent. You got to keep your eyes open for those windows of opportunity. Because if you're working hard and you keep your head up and you take care of yourself and you look for those opportunities, you're going to find out what the next then what is. So don't stress about it too much right now. Figure out what your next then what is. Go after it. And then the next one will become more apparent. Thank you so much for having me.
Hang tight for just 1 second, Lynn. So I want to specifically thank each one of the legislators for being here. Again, it's time out of their personal time with their family. They get a break from the legislature and they decide to come here to be with us. I especially want to commend Representative Dollins because it's not easy to be in the minority in Oklahoma. It's almost impossible to get legislation passed. But guys like him continue to fight, continue to represent. Some of you came to Boise State because you came and talked to us and said, this isn't for me. I'm in the minority. I don't agree with all these conservative guys from rural areas. And we've had that talk with you. Represent yourself, represent the minority. Someone's got to do it. And so I commend him. It's tough, and he did a great job tonight. And thank you. Director Brooks has some special gifts for our guests. That one not on? There you go.
All right.
Technical difficulties.
That one works. That doesn't work. I'll just talk. Anyway, I appreciate it very much to echo Director Emeritus Ballinger up here. Clay, you did a great job. Next year, if you could maybe get some guys with some energy that spoke their mind, I think the kids would like it just a little bit more.
I'll work on that.
No, you guys did fantastic, and we really do appreciate it. And we really appreciate you guys being flexible on our schedule tonight. Being able to go out there and support our new host campus was fantastic. We really appreciate you giving us the time to do that. National champions. We know you guys are running for re-election. We know you're running for a big seat. We know there's special elections coming up. This is a busy time, and these guys came out here and spent 3 hours with you. It's great. We really appreciate it. How about one more round of applause? We've got a little something for you guys. We've got our commemorative coin here for Boise State 2022 that we want to give each of you, as well as the official headwear of Oklahoma Boise State, and of course our fancy little tote that you can take back. I'm going to give it first to Representative Dollins, being our only Democrat on stage. Like Clay said, that takes a lot of gumption. Thank you very much. Next up has to be Senator Quinn here for being a very good representative of the upper chamber of the legislature, all by himself. So thank you, Senator Quinn. And of course, I don't know how you compete with style like this, but Representative Fettgatter, thank you so much. Always entertaining.
And I think on behalf of all of us, it is fantastic to see such a distinguished member of the Armed Forces serving in the second act in a policy-making role. So we appreciate you, Representative West. Thanks so much.
All right.
I said, I hope I didn't mess y'all's plans up. I felt like that was perfect. Going too long.
No, it was perfect. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Yeah, we appreciate you coming out. That's great. And thanks for hosting us here. All right, gentlemen. That pretty much wraps up our evening. I just want to say thank you personally as your director of Boys State. Great questions. You guys did a really good job. There's a lot of policy stuff going on, and you guys are clearly in tune with it. A lot of folks your age, that is just not the case. I really appreciate the energy and enthusiasm you showed out there for the girls softball team. They absolutely loved it. They kept a few of us behind so that we could be introduced to the team as they came in. Oklahoma Boys State, the American Legion, it was fantastic. But you guys are doing great this week. I want you to keep up the energy. I want you to have a great evening, a great day tomorrow, and keep doing what you do. Where's our formations officer? Over to you.
I need my color guard to post. Where you at? Okay. Come on up here. They want me to use the microphone and be quiet. It's hard, ain't it? Boys State, attitude. Retire the colors. Present. Hoot. Order. Horns. Counselors, take charge of your cities.